Thank you, Rick. I'm an IP attorney, and I'm from the firm of Heslin, Rothenburg, Farley, and Mesiti. We're an exclusively IP firm. All we do is intellectual property. We've been doing it for about 40 years now, and I've been doing it for 25 years. So I've seen pretty much everything in this area. I'm here to talk about, what is IP and why is it important? And we can give you a long technical and legal definition about what IP is, what intellectual property is, but I like to keep things simple. So IP is generally just any new invention or any original work of authorship. Well, why is that important? Well, for our purposes here and why we're here today, we're talking about new ventures and startups and things like that. But for any new venture which doesn't have any product sales, it's the IP that is likely the company's most valuable asset. Just think about it. No product sales, no services offered yet. What do you have? You have your intellect, you have the intellectual property, and that's most likely the most valuable asset that you have at the time. So what does the IP rights, what does that give you? Why is it so important to have it? Because it's the intellectual property rights that lawfully give you the right to prevent anybody else from commercializing your invention or work. Without those rights, without perfecting those rights, you have no legal ability whatsoever to prevent competitors from taking your creative efforts and using them against you. So there are 3 points that I'd like to talk about that relate to what you should be looking for and thinking about when you're evaluating whether or not you've generated or you have any IP rights. So the first thing is first grade. And what I mean by first grade is, first graders do simple things, right? Well, IP can be simple too. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be overly technical. The amount of complication when compared to simplicity has nothing to do with whether or not you've generated IP, all right? So remember, first grade, it can be very simple. Second thing is problem solved. We heard at least 3 or 4 speakers before me talk about they created IP because they solved a particular problem. If there's a technical problem out there that you solved, it is highly likely that you've generated IP during your solution process. So remember, number 2, problem solved. If you solve the problem, you likely generated IP. And the third thing is the cat out of the bag? And what I mean by that is, have you published your work or have you offered it for sale? Did you let the cat out of the bag? Because if you did, there's a high likelihood that you've negatively affected your rights to protect your intellectual property or maybe even destroyed them. So remember, cat out of the bag. Is the cat out of the bag? 3 things. First grade, it can be simple. Problem solved. Did you solve a problem? You likely generated IP. And third, is the cat out of the bag? Did you disclose it? Did you offer it for sale? Because if you did, you might have created problems for yourself. I'm going to give you a little bit of a story that talks about these 3 points. There's a product on the marketplace now. It's called the Pure Protein Bar. It's a high protein, low carbohydrate food bar. You go into any Rite Aid, CVS, Walmart's, you go to the nutritional supplement section, you'll see this bar. Back in the mid-90s, 1995 or so, there were no such bars like this. There were high protein bars, but they were also high in carbohydrates, high in fat, and also high in calories. What they had back then, if people wanted to take a protein supplement, they used the protein powders. Make a protein shake, you make the powder shake, you're ingesting high protein without the carbohydrates. They couldn't figure out how to get the protein, which was in powder forms, to bind together into a bar. They just couldn't bind together without adding carbs in there and therefore making it a high carb product. This fellow, who's a local fellow, in his kitchen, figured out how to get the proteins to bind together. Very simple, not complicated, first grade. He did it in his kitchen. He solved the problem. Problem solved. He generated the IP right there. Problem is, he didn't realize what he'd done. He went to a bar manufacturer, a granola bar manufacturer, asked them to make the bar for him. They did. He sold it under his label to gyms and stores. cat out of the bag. Let the cat out of the bag. Within 3 years, every major nutritional supplement company in this country started making the same exact bar from him. Remember, don't let the cat out of the bag.
Thank you, Nick.